5:10.
5:10, okay, whatever. Who's drinking?
I'm calling to order the August 24th Shade Tree Commission meeting. If we could have roll call. Since Heather's not here, we have to do this ourselves. So how about you start, John?
John Rice, present. Carol Wagner, present.
Trish Adams here.
Robert Granicola here.
All right, everybody is accounted for except for Tom, who is unavailable tonight. Okay, so if we could just please pause for a moment of silence and then we'll stand for Pledge of Allegiance. If we could all stand, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to consider approving tonight's agenda?
I move.
Okay.
Second.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
I
Aye. Motion passes. Do I have a motion to approve? Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped. Do we have any public comments on the agenda? Any additions? No, okay. Number 6, the minutes. Do I have a motion to consider approving the minutes from the July 27th, 2023 meeting?
Yes, I'm not gonna move my own minutes. Second.
Oh my God, all right. I'll move. Second. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, so number 7, report. Since John Hosbach, our arborist, is unavailable tonight, we will pass that. Same thing with the EAC liaison. We will actually be removing that standing item from our agenda in the future. All right, so moving on to number 8, approved permits. I don't think we have any individual permits to review. So we'll move on to number 9, land development review. 9.1, discussion and possible action on the Subbio Land Development Application. If I pronounce your name correctly, I'm sorry if I mispronounce it. Okay. Yeah, so if you would like, you can either stand there or we'll need a, or go to the, yeah, because we'll need a microphone. Yeah, sure, please.
Good evening. My name is Vern Panzak. I'm a principal at the landscape architecture and land planning firm Black & Thomas Panzak. We're located in Paoli, Pennsylvania, and we're happy to be back in Newtown Township. I have with me Jenny Ryan Geisweit, who's a senior landscape architect working on the Subbio Land Development Project. And I just wanted to say that this afternoon I reached out to John Hosbach. John had written the review letter on the previous submission of the project that did not include a landscape plan. We were brought on to the team with the applicant, Arcus Architects and JMR Engineering, and we've since provided the landscape plan that I hope you have had and have had an opportunity to look at. John had mentioned that he would not be here tonight, and that he said that to mention that we would be happy to work with John if there are any revisions, modifications, things that you feel might be necessary. But we've reviewed the ordinance. We've prepared a plan. We've been to the site. We've reviewed the trees on site. There are, some challenges with some of the trees that are out there. And, we're here to talk about all of this, the design work. And, with that little intro, I'd just like to turn it over to Jenny to get into the details of the design.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm not sure if you have the plan to put up on the screen, but that might be helpful.
It's the third one down, I think, the landscape.
I don't think it's gonna work. Yeah, I can just.
You can point, it's fine. Yeah, it's.
Bonnie, could you spell your name for the record, please?
Yes, it's Jennie, that's the first name, and last name is Ryan Geisweit, so it's RYAN hyphen GISEWHITE.
I got it pretty close. Thank you. Okay, so to start with, there were street trees required here. I guess overall, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the project, but the current property for Subbio is this area here. Okay, great, thank you. So they have purchased the other property and would like to add a few additions and just connect it and just expand their business into both buildings here. So as far as the planting requirements go, there are street tree requirements along Westchester Pike and Row Lane, sorry. And building area planting requirements, accessory building area planting requirements, parking lot area, primary buffer planting, and secondary buffer planting. So what we've tried to do is save as many trees as possible on the site and count them towards requirements where there might be limited space. So for the street tree requirements, there are 4 deciduous trees that we're suggesting along Westchester Pike. There's 2 existing there, which are these 2 trees here. And the building area planting, when we look at the next plan, you'll see that we're providing 2 deciduous trees and 3 flowering trees, as well as 18 shrubs, which fully fulfills the requirement. The accessory building planting area, there's a small dumpster enclosure here. So that's the only area that we're doing an accessory structure. And 5 evergreen shrubs or trees are required there, and we've gone with 5 evergreen shrubs at the required 6-foot height. The parking area planting, we're suggesting, since there's very limited space around the existing parking lot areas, that we would provide, there's 9 required trees, and we would provide 6, and 4 of those are existing. So that would be this tree, this one, and that one here. For the buffer areas, for the primary buffer, we are asking for a waiver to provide buffer along this property line here. This is very tight. The edge of pavement is right, maybe just a few feet off of the property line. And we're going to suggest putting a 6-foot solid fence there instead. So we would provide 8 evergreen trees. There are 6 existing evergreen trees on this property line that we're saving, and 14 deciduous shrubs. The secondary buffer is this property line here, which is also very tight with the edge of pavement for that parking lot. And we're requesting a waiver for that entire requirement due to space and the existing Zelkova here.
So, also in total, there are, 9 deciduous trees, 8 evergreen trees, 5 evergreen shrubs, 14 deciduous shrubs, and 18 evergreen or deciduous shrubs that we are providing. There is a requirement for replacement trees, and we are removing, if we scroll up a little bit, I think it's getting cut off here at the top. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so there's 6 trees that are healthy, trees that we do feel like, we are removing and have counted in a requirement. There are 4 invasives, they're Norway maples and one's a mulberry that we're removing, but we're not, replacing, since they are invasive and also poor quality trees. We are requesting a waiver for the replacement trees. Due to the limited nature of the site, if we move to the next plan, you can see our proposed plan and how the site is sort of filled out by the landscape. So here we have the street trees. This is the buffer and the secondary accessory structure screening here, and then the building planting area in this area, as well as the parking lot trees here. And then you can see the existing trees sort of finishing out that parking lot requirement. Also on the second page, we have our species list. We tried to keep with native species. There are a few non-native but non-invasive plants in here as well, just for their sort of columnar shape and what we feel like they can provide for this site. Are there any questions?
Yeah, so your tree selection, did you refer to our tree list? Because there's a number of those trees that are not on our list that we would ask for.
We did use it as a reference. There were a few spaces that are fairly tight with the building that we have provided, like the upright ginkgo in here. Otherwise, I think, you know, there are mostly natives in here that I think that would be acceptable. Maybe not the same cultivars that are listed, but maybe improved varieties that could be an advantage for the site.
Yeah.
Did look at the list that was included in the shade tree section of the ordinance of the website. And, you know, the things that were on the list that we chose were the service berry, the fringe tree, sour gum, ginkgo, century, and the smelly sweet. I guess the thing that's missing is the Latinus acerifolia. That was one that John and I found, and you know, we're happy to modify that selection to be something.
Yeah, I just think that's too big for the spot because of the wires.
Yeah, we've got the wires there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do have the 2 tilia that are flanking the driveway entrance there now. If you prefer a similar tree to
Probably something like an ironwood or something like that, that's gonna stay smaller, that, you know, it's only gonna get 35-foot height. So that you won't have the interference with the wires, because the plane tree is gonna get 80 foot tall. And then, you know, Pico's gonna come in and just hack the side of it out. You know? And then plus it into the building. I mean, it's gonna go towards the building, actually you'd have problems there.
Yeah, we're, as I said, we're happy to.
Yeah, I know it's a very tight spot. It's a very tight spot there, you know, to try to plan all what is required, you know.
And I guess I have, if we could use something other than the arborvitae, because they don't really have a lot of habitat value or such. So if you could maybe swap out something from our list, swap out the arborvitae.
Yeah, one of the things that we were sort of challenged with was, it's something that would take some shade because we are tucking it into an existing planting there. Maybe the cryptomeria.
Yeah, maybe work with John on that. I mean, like you had mentioned that.
What do you have a problem with the green giants?
It's not on our list. Well, whatever.
We're flexible. We just want to plant something obviously that's gonna thrive in the conditions that,
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're inheriting, so to speak. And again, there's certain sections where we're tucking things into that existing buffer planting on the south side.
Yeah, the green giants are all kind of in this area here. This is Nellie Stevens up here, so they're kind of limited to that area.
I mean, the green giants are to block the trash container from the neighbors.
Right.
I'll defer
Yeah,
to you guys.
they're part of that primary buffer here.
I will defer to you guys and to John on that.
Yeah, whatever John thinks is the right way to go, unless you guys have a preferred species there, we're very flexible.
I'm happy to defer to John on that one.
Okay.
And also, so I noticed, so when did you submit the plans?
Last Friday, I believe.
Okay, so I didn't even know it was in the packet until I looked this afternoon. So I really didn't have an opportunity to review it super closely. So if I say something that's inaccurate, please correct me. But the way that I was looking at the plan, it seems like, so I heard you say that you're not counting the invasive trees in the tree replacement formula, and I don't think our ordinance allows for that. I don't think it matters. I think it just, so I would say that those trees need to be replaced. And part of your, and part of the total. And it looks to me that there were, let's see, around 23 trees then that would need to be replaced. And if you can't replace it, then the option, I don't think we have an option to waive it, but I'll defer to Stephen. But the option is to pay into a tree fund. So I think that would be our preferred route. And if you can't avoid any additional trees, which I understand the constraints of the property, of course. So to me, it looks like that we need some more to meet the requirements of the ordinance.
I think we could double check with John, but I thought that the ordinance did say that invasives or dead, diseased or dying trees wouldn't have to be replaced. I think that maybe even in his comment letter that might have been included, but we can double check on that.
Yeah, maybe the dead ones, but I don't think it matters if it's considered an invasive. I think it's purely based on the DBH of the tree.
Okay.
At least that's my understanding. But again, let's check with John on that. And again, I haven't had a chance to really dig into this and really compare. So I apologize. I don't feel fully prepared.
Yeah,
You know,
understandable. Yeah. One of the things that we were curious about was shade tree advisories tend not to get involved with sidewalk issues. But there's a tree on this property that we didn't choose to remove, and that would be a Norway maple that sits approximately right here. And that would be removed as a result of the requirement to extend the sidewalk to a portion of Row Lane that has no sidewalk connection. So, you know, it's really not our choice to remove that tree.
Yeah, I see your point. I don't know, Steve, what happens when there's a conflict? I mean, do we put that responsibility on the developer regardless because they're meeting all the codes?
Well, I think that at that point, that's probably not a decision that gets made in this room. You know, that'll probably be a decision that gets made at the board level. I'm assuming you'll present that as something at the planning commission as well. Again, we have done some things to kind of try to work around some tree removal when possible. I'm looking at this, are we talking about like 5 feet of sidewalk?
Yeah, you know, one of the issues was that the driveway curb cut was offset from the driveway itself currently. And, you know, township requested that be rectified, and that completely makes sense. So that would be located here. It's just this section of sidewalk. It's probably, I don't know, 8 or 9 feet, something like that. And there's a, you know, I think it's a 13-inch maple that sits in there. You know, it is a Norway maple, but it just seems like it's a shame to take that tree down, replace it with sidewalk that will not be extended. At least I don't anticipate it being extended unless the neighborhood ends up rallying and, you know, wanting to see sidewalks extended. So
We are pushing for sidewalk everywhere as we see development happen. I mean, that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
But that being said, I mean, we've worked with some developers and said, just what it would cost you to put that sidewalk in, let's put it in escrow. And if we ever get the chance to put it in that area, or, you know, then we would take that on and do that as, you know, we would make that happen. And, you know, the easements there and all of that's taken care of. We can probably work through that. We obviously don't want to do something that doesn't make any sense. And we're talking about 8 feet of sidewalk probably doesn't make sense but we probably would have you go ahead and put in the curb piece, the curb cut and the dip and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And then we'll look at it. But again, I'm not a voting member of the board. But that would not surprise me if they agreed to something along those lines.
Okay, all right. And, you know, we're all for sidewalks. You know, there are practical matters for certain things, not certain things, but, you know, it's just, I wanted to bring it to your attention. You know, it's a tree and we're not gonna get hung up about that, but just calling it out.
Yeah. Well, I think it's good if we can, you know, avoid impacts. I think that's usually the best way to go.
Yeah.
And if there's an opportunity in order to do that at the board level to make that decision, or at the planning board level, I mean, certainly I recommend bringing that up at the planning meeting if you're going to present there.
It would be appropriate if you all believe that would make sense, that for you to put in your recommendation, that, you know, that something be done, whether, you know, money set aside or, you know, whatever for that purpose, so that tree could remain at this time until such time that it would actually be a connection of a sidewalk.
Okay.
I don't think it was ever a planted tree.
I'm sorry.
I don't think it was ever a planted tree. It's just a.
Yeah,
volunteer.
I agree. And there is another
Most of
tree
these
that
outside the
sits,
volunteers.
there is another tree that sits beyond, southward on that side of the street. You know, it's just, this neighbor may appreciate that foliage, you know, with respect to the the building that's off-site to the west there.
Sure.
So, again, I think these suggestions are very practical and, we're happy to accommodate that sort of situation moving forward.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good idea as well. Okay, so at this point, so about the trees that are, I don't feel like I've had adequate time to review this, and I think given that, and I noticed too that in your plan you reference compliance with 158-7, and that's the definitions, and that's where we have the tree replacement formula. But I noticed that you didn't mention 158-10, and that's where the land development piece comes in, and there's information that should be provided that and it could be here, but like I said, I couldn't peel it out from the plans. So there's a number of requirements, like for instance, on the plan, it needs to indicate all the trees that are on the site with the size and the species. I think you've noted the ones that, and again, it's just like I said, and I apologize, I've not had time to really dig into this.
Yeah, that information is on the plan.
Okay, and
we've got the tree protection fencing, if that's maybe part of the other land development. We went through John's review letter and, kind of tried to hit all of the points that were on that letter. We didn't pick up on 158-10.
Yeah, there's several sections to that. There's an A and B, C, and D. And I think you've hit the points for chapter 104. But I think what's missing is 158-10. I mean, and again, I mean, it could be here, maybe just not. There's other things, yeah, but there's other things in addition to just those things I just mentioned, and I just can't tell. Like, for instance, there have approximate location of trees listed in the plan from adjoining properties. There's just other.
Yeah, we've
things
got
that
some plants that were located on the south side that are just off the property.
That's
And-
anything that's 10 feet off the property.
Yeah, I think it was
Okay.
10 feet off the property. I think really the only place that there are trees that of consequence and impact would be on this section of that border. We've got a couple shown here. There's when you consult the the aerial information, it's a little obscured and we can't tell whether it's the trees on our site or the trees
Right.
on maybe possible trees
Right.
on the other site. I guess what I would say is that our limit of disturbance is set back quite far from this property.
Okay.
And there's only one tree, which is a sort of a volunteer willow species that would be removed because of the impact of the stormwater management plan or feature that's in that area. So, we're keeping trees on our site and, our limits of disturbance are inboard from there. So I think, in terms of, offsite impacts, I think we're very, very limited. There are no trees here. We could see that very clearly on the aerial. There's a driveway here and Westchester Pike and Row Lane. So, again, it would just be things that are happening here. There's really no impact in here. There's a little bit of just really the tree removal disturbance happening in that one location.
Okay, so then, okay. Then really, I guess it boils down then to the tree replacement formula. And how to deal with the trees that can't, that you may be responsible for, the developer is responsible for, but, and then how to deal with that balance.
Yeah.
And so I guess there's the option, Steve, then to pay into.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think that that's being reviewed, but yes.
How is that number typically established in terms of?
I think the engineer has come back with a number and said that an average planted tree costs. I don't quote me on this
Right.
number, but I think
Right.
it's about $300.
Right.
And then it costs X number of dollars to plant it. And so the total cost is, let's say, $450.
Right.
And so if you've got 10 trees that you're not planting, it's 450 times 10.
Right.
Okay, so
Okay.
that's typically the method that they use.
Right. Right.
So it's, I know it's a number that's been reviewed by both the engineer and our arborist,
Okay.
trying to come up with something that, like, what's the standard
Right.
that if you went out and you're hiring
Yeah.
a landscaper to do this, what
Right.
would it cost?
Right. Okay.
And did it not also include some level of post-planting maintenance until it's established?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of that that's included as well. Like, you know, you have that 18-month requirement. It just covers that 18 month.
Well, assuming that there's a number that we could review and, you know, wondering if that could be a condition this evening that would be promoted. Also maybe a condition that John Hosbach is you know, fine with the plan. We'll work with John to approve, you know, whatever species of tree goes across the Westchester Pike. Would it be possible to have an action on the plan tonight?
Discussion? Have you guys feel comfortable with the time that you've had to review it?
A lot of work into.
Well,
They're just.
I mean, we. It's kind of the thing, John has to review it, the arborist, the township arborist, because that's what he's paid by the township to do.
Right.
We could say it looks good for us, but I mean, then you could work out the hash details with him, like different planting species and stuff like that, that you have to. I mean, and then numbers wise, it's just number wise, taking down the other trees. I don't know if they're exempt. If he said they're exempt and there's a thing in it. That would like the Norway maple.
Just the
stuff,
dead
you know,
trees.
the dead trees, you know,
Right.
There isn't a.
Well,
They
they
like the mulberry, I mean, I
They-
looked at the site, I mean, they're definitely.
Yeah.
I
Right.
even told John, they're bad, you know.
Yes, but that doesn't mean
I
they don't
understand
get
that, but-
replaced.
But I'm
They're
saying,
still count.
but I don't know if they're exempt because of their state or because of what they are, or it could be, but
I
it's a
would,
very limited site.
I
I'm
would,
just saying.
I would defer to John on making the decision on what's a dead tree and what needs to be replaced and what isn't. The ordinance doesn't have anything in it, like an exception for an invasive. I think all it says is that if it's a dead tree, clearly if it's dead, but if it's not completely dead, then I don't think that we can excuse that. That doesn't
Well,
get.
I'm not
a-
saying you can't.
But I don't,
That's okay.
let me say this, so we're getting a little bit into the weeds of the ordinance and what it says. They're gonna have to comply with whatever the ordinance says.
Exactly.
Right.
Well,
So,
which is John has to
and you
review it.
can, Pat, if you wanted to tonight, to move this from you tonight on. If you wanted to say that it would have to meet all the township requirements of the ordinance, related to tree replacement,
Right.
you could say that,
Right.
and
From
that'll be
review of
reviewed by
John-
somebody who's smarter than me,
Yeah, I mean,
who understands the legal side of it. And we can do that. The second piece is if you want to mention, and I think you said it was a maple tree that was on the
Right.
corner.
That's right.
That was on the corner related to the sidewalk. You could do that. I think you had asked for something instead of the arborvitae, that, if you wanted to make that note. But those are the things like you could put in, and you could put it contingent upon review of the arborist and meeting the township requirements. And I think you could comfortably move that from here to there in that way. And that's up to you if you feel like you've had enough time to review it. I'm not saying you have to. I'm just saying that's a way for you to move forward in that way, since we don't have John here tonight to say this is good and this is good.
Yeah, and as I said, I did talk to John, and he obviously did say he was not going to be able to attend, but that he said to tell you that we would be happy to, work with John and, resolve any issues that may exist with species or otherwise. So, perfectly happy to engage in that with John.
No, I don't feel comfortable not having enough time in order to review it. And I appreciate, the explanation here. If someone else would like to make a motion to conditionally approve it, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just think that having, it's just we don't get enough time to review these. And then we have to give a report to planning, like right after this. So it's a lot. And we don't have, we're never given enough time in order to review this.
This plan's pretty straight.
Okay, well then you make the motion.
All right, I make a motion to approve this plan on contingent that it meets the shade tree replacement requirements, and it be final reviewed by the Township Arborist for species, types, and the amount of trees that he agrees with the landscape architect to do that.
What about the maple tree?
Do you want to make any, do you want to make any comment related to the sidewalk as a recommendation?
I think that would be the supervisors, wouldn't it?
I mean, it's ultimately going to be their decision, but if you as a board want to say, we would prefer to see that tree stay in light of the fact that the sidewalk doesn't go anywhere, then that's an option that you
Well,
could
it's
put.
staying anyway.
No, I think you were saying it would need to come out in order to put the sidewalk in.
Yeah, the sidewalk is getting extended, which would take out the tree. And I think we would be in agreement to set some funds aside to extend the sidewalk at some time, should the connecting sidewalk be necessary.
Okay, and I also recommend retaining the small maple tree where
Rolling.
on Road Lane, where the new curb cut for the driveway will be installed. To lead the tree.
And we'd rather see something other than arborvitae.
Yeah,
I mean,
well,
that's between John and.
right, I
they
think
hash that
that's,
out. I mean, John and them are gonna hash that out.
So
about
that
the
would
plane
be-
Trees and the arborvitae or whatever.
so that would be contingent upon the review of the
The arborist.
ordinance
The number
with
of
the
trees.
arborist. And
Arbors.
right, on the number of tree replaced that needs to be replaced,
The tree replacement requirements.
right? And I would also add to your motion that you would accept payment in lieu fee of payment into the tree fund for the trees if they don't have enough room on site
Wasn't
to
that
replace.
automatic with the ordinance?
No, they're, Because they were asking for it to be waived.
Any tree that's, and also make a motion, any tree that's not
For the contingent.
replaced will be, money will be put into the tree fund for replacement at difference.
Well, it just goes, yeah, well, it still needs to be decided on how that money is gonna be used. Okay. All right, so to summarize. So we're making a recommendation of conditional approval or recommendation of conditions, right? Provided that it meets all township ordinance replacement requirements or the ordinance and the tree replacement requirements. It's also contingent upon review of with the township arborist. And we're also recommending retaining the maple tree along Row Lane that was to be removed due to the sidewalk. Is that correct? Was there anything else? Oh, and the arborvitae will be with John.
Yeah, and then the money.
Oh, and then, yes, and then any trees that cannot be replaced on site, then there's the agreement that the funds would then go into the commemorative tree fund. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you get that, Carol?
Pretty much.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion? Or you have a motion? Do I have a first?
Yeah.
Oh.
recommend.
Oh, okay. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Okay.
Aye.
Aye. All right,
All right.
motion passes. It was
John.
John. All right,
Thank you very much. And
thank you.
you know, this consideration, you've given the short time that you've had to review the plans. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Moving on to item 10, future land development review. There's no action on 10.1 for Garrett Williamson or the 3111 Sawmill.
If you're comfortable, both of those seem to be becoming long-term projects that are not going to be back before you in any near future.
Okay.
As long as you're comfortable, I'm going to at least take Garrett Williamson off. I don't think you'll see that
Okay,
maybe in any of your tenure on the board, because I think they're like having to do fundraising before they go forward. So I think you're going to see that there's not much there. The sawmill is going through some issues that they may be a little bit before they pull the trigger as well, coming back before you.
okay,
So unless I have an objection from you, I'd like to remove both of those from your agenda, so you don't have to worry about them every time.
I appreciate that. All right, that sounds acceptable. And also we're, before I think you got here, we also pulled under reports, 17.2.
Yes.
Report from the EAC liaison, because apparently there's an issue, so we're removing that one
Okay.
from it.
I thought that was a special for just tonight, so that's why I didn't have it removed before.
Well, we usually just have a placeholder there because we've been having, we've been working with the EAC on a number
Yeah.
of projects, and it just makes it a lot easier if we can do that, and so that's why we've had
Yep.
that standing agenda item. All right, so moving on then to 11, new business. There's
The only-
none.
If I could for just a moment, I just want to give you a quick update. You don't have it on your agenda tonight. But the solicitor has been working on the shade tree rewrite. And I suspect that you will have something at your next meeting.
So, we do have that. We have that on 12.2. That's under old business.
I have that it's a tree inventory. Am I missing something?
Yep. Yeah, the old business is, 12.1 is discussion and
I
action. on the
apologize.
budget. Okay,
I apologize. Mine does not have that on there, so.
okey dokey. All right, all right.
What do I know?
All right, so, yeah, we'll talk about that. I wanted to give a report out on the meeting that we had with the solicitor. So 12.1, discussion and action on the 2024 budget. I'll hand it over to you, Rob.
You want a copy of this, Steve?
At some point, that would be great.
You want it now, so you can.
That would be helpful, I guess.
Here you go.
Thank you.
Basically. I don't know what we're gonna start with I guess we'll just start with the EAC thing. The thing for the MS4 plan, that they were planning on planting trees. And we are gonna split the difference. They were gonna put like 4,000 in and we were gonna put 4,000 in on
Yep.
budget. That's the first thing. 125 native trees we were gonna plant. So that was for the MS4. That
Okay.
was the first thing on the budget for next year. Then we have like tree tags and stuff, just to identify the newly planted trees, basically. That people can go and take a look and walk through the parks and, they're tagged, they can look and say, yeah, that's a linden tree, that's a, red bud, so they can see and identify them. You need the money emails?
I see that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, that was like $150. I mean, not too much. For that.
Am I looking at the wrong one then?
Which one are you at?
I thought I was looking at the cataloging, identifying trees. Is that different than the tree tags?
Yeah, you're probably out of order.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
it says.
Oh, I'm with you now.
Identifying
I'm sorry, I had the wrong one on top.
Identify new, I mean, they're all out of order. I'd put them together.
Yeah,
just-
I got you. That's, I just wanted to make, when you said $150, I saw 500. That's why
Yeah, okay, so that's out
Okay.
for 150.
I'm with you.
We have like shirts, banners and safety equipment, like, shirts for like promotional stuff when we go to like the farmer's market, the thing in the square like they had last year. Just saying that we're Shade Tree Commission with the township logo on it. Banner. Safety vest saying that we're the Shade Tree Commission because there was an incident where our township arborist was walking around looking at trees and the police were called. So us being, Zach, were you with him?
I got that info.
So, I mean, us saying like we're walking around a park taking pictures and have an iPad and the mother sees us taking pictures with their kidney area as
No.
on the swing set.
I think that's,
Us saying like Shade Tree Commission tree survey.
Yep.
With the township thing, the red vest saying it, I think that's a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
So we don't have incidents, and that was like $750 for all that stuff. And then, the one that you were on first, the cataloging.
Yep.
That's just like tools, measuring devices and stuff like that for cataloging the trees,
Mhm.
and that was, 500. So that's our budget stuff for next year.
And that'll help us. And that'll help us with our tree inventory and make
Yes,
that
yeah,
easier and meet our responsibilities of doing that.
Yeah. I think that's all the stuff we talked about. If you need more stuff filled out on that, I didn't know of all the stuff.
no, I think that's enough.
I
to
mean,
get
all
us.
the stuff I did in what I could, and I'm like, well, this is kind of the same stuff over again. They're asking the questions. I'm like, so I just tried to fill it out the best I could.
Yep.
So,
No, my first review, it looks fine. If we have questions, we'll come back and
All right,
get specifics if we
Okay.
need them. The one that I might ask you to break down is just because it's multiple different things, the shirts, banners, and vests, just a real quick breakdown financially, like the banners,
yeah, I
hundred and
mean,
fifty.
I have that stuff
Yeah.
written down. It's just that, like, when I talk to Heather, she's like, just kind of write
Yeah,
name,
no,
price, and what
yeah.
you're doing with it.
no, that's
Not
fine.
like what
I-
each individual shirt is. and
Only
everything.
because we're at 750.
Yeah.
I don't need to know each individual shirt, but like if you say shirts are $200.
It's like 250.
Yeah, and
I mean,
then
I have
the
that
banner's
already,
hundred and fifty and the vest are the remaining.
Yeah, I mean, I
That-
have all that, so. if
Yeah.
You know,
That would be the only thing I would suggest adding, just so that when we put it
okay,
in,
I can get you another sheet.
we'll keep it as a whole
Okay,
in the budget for the board, but just in case there's some
yeah, I
question.
mean, I have it written down on my,
Yeah. Yep,
on my
perfect.
copy. I just did it as a whole.
Yeah.
Instead of writing each into, like, at first I thought I had to do like shirts, that, and Heather's like, no, put it all in a group and,
No, that's all a group.
yeah.
It's all
put it
for the
in-
same
yeah,
purpose.
It's all for the same purpose. She
Yeah.
said do that.
Yeah.
Because you don't need a sheet for each item.
And you're not asking for names on every shirt. You're just asking for shirts so that you, whoever's wearing them can do it and just say shade tree. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, they don't need to be personalized.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Well, it would be great if we had name tags.
well,
Well,
we're
we
talking
can do
about
Yeah.
that. So,
I'm not
Yeah,
getting my
we
shirt
do
back.
that.
Do we get to keep this?
well, no, we're not necessarily, I'm not asking for the shirt back. I'm just, I mean, if I can print the same thing on every shirt, it's a lot less
I think the
expensive
ones the
than saying
supervisors have.
Rob.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones the supervisors have were what, $35-40 a piece or
Yeah.
something, like the polo shirts or whatever. I think they were somewhere in there.
Yeah,
We don't need anything that fancy. So at this point, then, do we need to, I'm assuming we need to make a motion to accept the budget?
yes,
Okay. All right, I'll make a motion to accept the budget as proposed. Do I need to break it down
I think I would just list if I.
just for each one?
Do you have a total? I'm
We
trying to add that up real quick. There's 4 sheets, right?
Yep,
Yes.
150.
I think I came up with $5,400
Yeah,
if I.
No.
add-
It's 2/4, so it's like.
No,
No.
that's the HC's budget.
yeah,
Oh.
So it's just 1/4.
okay.
I-
All right.
Am I right? 5,400?
We trust your math.
You trust my math? You do realize it's later in the day. It's. Although my wife would tell you, this is usually when I get started.
Yes.
I'm looking at 4,150, 750 and 500. I think that's $5,400.
Okay,
I'd like to see the ID, the name badges added to the shirts and safety banners and stuff.
well, was the township gonna do that for all the committees? Anyway?
We're looking at something, I don't know what we're gonna do, but we're looking at something that you would have for events that would be something that has your name or that you can wear when you're out and going and doing. I don't know what
Something
that's
that
gonna.
Wouldn't have to be on the budget, it would just.
Well, I mean, I think we're gonna cover it under our budget
Oh,
the
for
bigger
all of them. I mean, like, I don't know that it's gonna be as fancy as like what Cindy showed with the one for the White Waterway, but I think there's gonna be something that's very basic that, you know, as committee members change, it's easy for us to do.
Sounds good. All right, okay, so, start again. I make a motion to recommend, the budget request of $5,400 for tags and cataloging and things to help us identify who we are and for the projects with the EAC. Do I have a second?
So.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes. Thank you for doing all that work, Rob. That
Oh,
was,
yeah.
that was a lot. Thank you so much.
Very good.
Thank Rose. All right. All right. Okay, moving on to 12.2 ordinance update, revisions on the ordinance. So, I don't, Steve, did you want me to give a summary or did you want to give a
No,
summary?
you could go ahead and give your summary. I had something that you didn't have, and so I just wanted, that's what I
Okay.
was gonna say.
All right, so on August 11th, I had the opportunity to meet with Steve Neese and Andy and Rich, the solicitor, to go over the ordinance. I guess to put it succinctly, the ordinance is going to be completely rewritten. And the reach of the shade tree is going to be diminished to very limited things like just to street trees and to trees on public property. So, and then our limited review, I don't know what's going to happen to 15810. I assume that it's going to be gutted. And so I don't know what we're going to do as far as land review at that point. So we'll wait and see at that point.
So what I would add just to that is that I think we're going to do this in two pieces. One will be basically looking just at the street trees and property on township or trees on township property. The second one will probably be a second rewrite of the land development plan or land development ordinance to cover what the role of the shade tree will be in that one as well. So it'll be two separate pieces. And hopefully meet with the state guidelines of what the shade tree commission is allowed to be responsible for.
Oh, and I forgot to mention too that with respect to heritage trees, it's unclear how we're going to deal with those. I don't know if we're going to be able to extend any protection to them at all. So, all right.
I don't know. I know Springfield's, when you have a tree to certain, now I think they're a first class township, aren't they, Springfield?
I think so.
Maybe different
Yes.
than what we could do. But I know they're pretty much, if you're over a certain size, they're. Not that people don't cut it down anyway, and just pay the fine. You know what I mean? That's. Kind of the stuff they do, but I know. Where I guess the solicitor's going is more towards what Springfield's is it's very limited. What their shade tree thing is like front yard setback, like I've been saying all the time, it's like a certain, I mean, it's. They go by front yard setback, whatever's to the front door forward or 50 feet is what they do. And I'm sure that's what he's coming back with, something like that, whatever the right of way is that we have control of, but otherwise, I don't know what. I don't know what. We really could say anyway, and it'd be legal. Because it's someone's personal property.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You can say anything you want, but it doesn't make it legal. So, we just have to wait to see what he comes back with. What it comes down to.
Right, and I said on a positive note, at least with trying to make it easier for people to identify the right of way that we're gonna use the table that's already existing and add a column that's gonna basically tell a homeowner how far to measure from the edge of the road into their.
That's kind of what Springfield does. That's why they say front door. Like most of the houses, the street, it's almost like 50 feet from the, whatever. That's where they get theirs, and you pretty much
Their
abide
lots
by,
are way small.
what's that?
Aren't their lots a lot smaller?
They are. That's why I'm saying that's why they do 50 feet. I've been stopped before down there where they go, oh, I'm like, no, it's 75 foot off the front. Well, I'll still get the permit. Whatever. It's like, it's $5. Here you go. It makes you happy.
So, let's see, so the right of way, that was good. The other thing that we talked about, that came up here was the tree fund. So instead of in cases just like this, where, you know, it's just not feasible to put all the replacement trees on the property itself, then there is an opportunity to pay into an in lieu fee fund. And John, and I guess, and you said the engineer, Steve, is talking about what that number would be. And I think what you mentioned was about right, was anything between, you know, $400 and $500 a tree would be pretty much what it would end up being, dependent on what they come up with, what's
Which is
typical.
great. It would take that 4,000 from the EAC and just wait. You know,
Right,
you're
and
talking
so-
that project there, like 4,500 right there.
So what I
You
would,
know?
I mean, and one thing that I would ask Steve is there a way that, because I know the solicitor was talking about just putting it into the general fund. I'm not comfortable with that. I would rather have that be, I mean, unless you can earmark it.
Well, I think his concern, I understand you're not comfortable with it. I think his concern is the way the state law is written, we may not have a choice of what we do with it.
Is there a way that money, that keep track of how, of that, and then will there be a discussion on how that money then will be spent and what, because we could use it for outreach. There's things that we could do. We could do some of the
I know he's working through that. I don't know where he's landing yet.
okay.
So until I know where exactly he's landing, I think he's kind of finishing up the draft, or has finished up the draft of the rewrite for the first section. The land development section, I don't think he's even started on yet. So that's where I think we are.
So the first section you said is just for,
So it would,
Street trees?
it would basically come back and handle street trees and handle trees on township property. That's my understanding of it. And then the second
And then-
piece,
and then, so,
we need to move more to keep the lights on.
Get up and dance in between.
and then, so,
The second section is what?
is trees on,
Is
Property.
trees related
So-
to land development.
yeah, and then, so the second part is land development. So to me, it's like, I don't. What's it gonna say other than the street tree thing? And it's gonna have the R right away. So there's nothing, so when is heritage trees gonna be, is that part of
He's still.
first
he's-
phase? Or is that
Well,
the
I don't
second?
think so. Based on the conversation I had, I don't know how, I think he's saying heritage trees is probably going to be maybe a third review, but right now he's not coming up with anything that gives authority over trees that would be on private property that would be considered heritage trees.
So where I kind of sit, it's that, it seems that the complete lack of, it seems the protections are all towards just a property rights, and that's where the focus is. And like, I know, like some photos were shared where there was a really large oak tree being taken down on Ellis Avenue. And that's just, I guess where I'm at is, I don't understand why we even bother to have a shade tree ordinance, because it really doesn't do anything to protect the tree canopy that is throughout the township. And it only, and considering the fact that probably, I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number. It's probably 90% of the shade trees in the township are on township property or on private property. They're not in the township property. There's very little land big land development that's going to be coming in. And so it's going to get to the point where there's nothing but private property. And I work, for the federal government. I'm an environmental regulator. We have pretty tight rules, but there's always wiggle room within those rules, especially when it just makes sense. And if a goal is to protect the tree canopy within the township, this ordinance, and I guess the whole purpose of the ordinance is going to be rewritten, because it certainly doesn't appear that we're ever going to meet that goal. And with the value and the ecosystem services that trees provide, the fact that we are continue to be out of compliance with MS4, we know what an important role trees have to protect our stormwater runoff and to address that pollution. And we're going to continue to be out of compliance if we continue to allow trees to be removed at the rate that they're being removed, and especially without taking in that component of what's happening on private property. And what that, instead of holding individual property owners responsible for ameliorating and mitigating that impact is then going to be felt by everybody else in the township. And it will be the taxpayers that are going to make up for what, because it doesn't matter what I'm doing on my private property to put in more trees. I'm not getting credit for that, but another person can cut down, as many trees as they want, and it doesn't matter. So how are we ever going to meet this goal? I think if we're going to try to, I don't understand why planting 1,000 trees is a goal, because it's a drop in the bucket if we're just allowing 3 times as many trees to be removed. So I'm just at a loss as to what is the point of the Shade Tree Commission? What's the point of the ordinance if there really isn't an appetite to truly do what's required to protect
I just want to
the
be
trees?
clear, though. It's not an issue of appetite. It's an issue of state law. And we cannot override state law. We don't have that ability. And state law does not give the township the right to determine whether an individual on private property takes down a tree. I hear you. But to make it a township issue is unfair to our board and to our staff. It is a state issue, and that's where we need to address this at. If you want that change, and I'm not opposed to it, because I understand. I do think that the fact that somebody can come in and cut their lot of trees has a drastic impact on who we are as a community. But I can't act outside of the state law, what the state law allows us to do. And we just can't. I mean, we could, I understand that some communities are, but I have a responsibility to tell the board to act within what the laws of the state allow for us to go do. And I think that's where we need to challenge if we want something different.
But isn't there something in that second-class township that says that you're allowed to make decisions that are for the greater good of the community?
Absolutely, but it also says that you have to do it within these guidelines. I can't take one statement and take it out of the context of what it has given me permission for. So if there wasn't anything related to shade trees, I might be able to actually go do something, but there's something that's very specific that says what we can do related to shade trees. And it limits what we can do. I mean, I don't disagree with you that it would make sense that, somebody can go and take down trees in an area that matters in regards to improving stormwater. And I mean, I agree with you. We're trying to put in 1,000, and I bet you 1,000 have come down in the same period of time that we tried to put in the 250 that we've gotten in. But I can't in good conscience tell the board to go do something that I know is against the state rules, and neither can the solicitor.
So, but we're supposed to be complying with the state law. So how is that not how is, I mean, on stormwater? So with MS4, how can we not argue that putting these in is to having these restrictions on what you can and cannot take down as far as trees on your property aren't meeting the requirements of meeting another state law?
I just, the state statute doesn't give the Shade Tree Commission that kind of authority. That's all I can tell you. It just does not.
So, okay, so maybe that's not us. Well, then maybe that's in planning, or maybe that's under another part of the code. But I mean, how do we even begin to comply with the MS4 when your hands are tied to prevent anybody from doing whatever they want on their property?
Well, I mean, we're allowed certain things for soil erosion, but it's fairly limited.
Well, but trees are part of that. That ameliorates that erosion. So why wouldn't that be something that would be a mitigating factor? That says that mitigates that erosion, that prevents that erosion.
Here's what I would recommend. I'm not the lawyer in the room. We have a lawyer. I'm asking him to attend next meeting when you review your ordinance that we're going to get to you. And at that point, I think that's a question that you can ask, and he may be able to go back and look at something in another area and see if that works.
I just know through my experience, I work for a state, I work for the federal government. I know that there's usually a way to make it work if you be creative and you use the law to your advantage instead of using it as an excuse as to why you can't. So that's what I'm encouraging the township to do. If you really are interested in preserving the canopy, because I think people move here to this township and this area because of the tree cover. They do. And people are removing these trees, are making the township look bad and reducing everybody's property values. And it's not meeting the goals of the township to make people want to move here, because that's what your mission statement says. And I think that's completely counter. So I would encourage you to look at creative ways on how can we, maybe it's not through Shade Tree, maybe it's not through us. I don't even know why we're here, honestly. Let's be creative, and instead of saying, no, we can't do it for this, let's look for ways that we can. That's what I would ask. And then, so how, when can we expect to see a draft for our review?
I would hope within a week or two that you would have that.
Okay, because I would like sufficient time to review it. Because I mean, like today, like I'm extremely uncomfortable being asked to make an action on something when I haven't had adequate time to review it. I think that's just irresponsible. And if in the ordinance or whatever he's doing, when in phase 2, if we could make sure we have in there that we need a short project description, just 2 lines of what they're doing, and it needs to come, we won't take action on it unless we've at least had it a week in advance. Because I don't feel comfortable doing that at all. I was not comfortable in the least making that recommendation. I did say that.
She did say no.
So at any rate, that's what I would ask, if we could have that put into, I guess, in that review. And we're losing a lot of big trees. And if he could bump up, and I don't understand what the holdup is with heritage trees, but I think that needs to be in with with the land development. I would prefer, if possible, because that's where we're gonna see a lot of those, potentially some of those big trees, if some of these developments, there's like just a couple of parcels that are left and they're heavily wooded. And there's a lot of, there are a number of heritage trees, at least that you can see right from the road. So I would be concerned about the potential of losing those. So, and I guess I'm just gonna ask Steve, why do we need a shade tree commission?
I think if we focus on township property trees and we focus on trees along the streetways, which do have tremendous benefit to help with the stormwater as well as for heat coming off the roads when there's shade trees are there, that makes a huge improvement. And why would you not want to do that? And that's why the township wants that. But I mean, you may find that it's not how you want to spend your time personally, but I think the township is saying we value shade trees along the street. That's why we went through and did this process.
It's not, this isn't my personal. This isn't personal. I'm asking just from the,
Well, I mean, you
What the-
made the statement, you didn't know why. And
Right,
you
I
didn't,
don't know why, yeah.
but I think that the statement that I'm making is, I think there's, just because we can't control everything, why not control the things we can control?
So what's the goal of, I mean, the trees that are on the public property are already protected. What are we doing there?
Well, I think that what we're saying on public property, I mean, they are protected, but I got to tell you, I could easily have a change in who my public works director is. You could have a change in your manager, and all of a sudden, the belief be, and I have a public works employee that give him a chainsaw, he'd take down anything he could take down with the chainsaw. So, I mean, I think that you do want to protect those, and that is a positive that is there. And, you know, I mean, I think there's a benefit that happens when you do that. I mean, if we set the standard of how people should take care of their properties and say, this is a model to follow after, isn't that better than sitting there and saying, oh, the township just went through and cleared out 3,000 trees because it just didn't want to be bothered having to take care of them. I don't want to do that either. I think there is a benefit. And so I would hope that that doesn't necessarily go away. In just because we say that the township could choose not to. We have a board that's protected. You could have a board tomorrow that's not. And it's not that the board couldn't change the rules, but they have to go through a public process to do that. And that's the advantage of putting something in as an ordinance and doing it is it's a public process that has to go through for that purpose. And I would think that if we turned around and said, this is where we were headed, that people would come out and say, what, wait a second, why are you doing this?
Okay. Yeah, all right. So like I said, if we could have at least 2 weeks to review it ahead of time. I really don't want to get it 3 days before.
No, I think, I mean, like I'm aware that he's kind of finished it up. I think he wanted John to take a quick look at it and then we'll get it to you guys.
Okay. All right. And then, so what do we do in the interim? Let's say that, so are we still acting under the current ordinance? Then until, I mean, because really, then we're behind it'll be really awkward if we don't know how we're dealing with land development. And we have a land development project come in and we're sort of like in the middle.
Yeah, I don't know that answer yet. We'll have to work that through with him, whether he takes out just one section. I'm not 100% sure how he'll do that and what the board's desires will be.
Okay. All right. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Feel free to speak up.
I know what you're trying to do, Trish. I agree with the heritage trees, but you're gonna end up in court over it, or you can do what you want to do, but I mean, it's a shame, but,
Winding up in court is not such a terrible thing if you're never aggressive. you
well, I
never
mean,
get
you still
anywhere.
lose. I mean, they're still gonna cut the tree down. If you don't have the legal right to do it, you don't have the legal right to do it. You know,
But maybe we do have the legal right to do it until a court rules we do.
state law says we don't. That's what the solicitor's doing.
Like
That's-
she's saying that there's ways around things.
Well,
Nothing's
then
black
she
and
has to
white.
research and figure the way
I
around it.
did, I did. It's through erosion control. It's through, it's meeting the stormwater requirements. Every tree you take down increases erosion.
And some trees cause erosion because the shade tree canopy, because the grass can't establish under it and it washes out. I've seen that too, so,
Well, and that's usually because there's another problem. It's not just that.
well, I'm just saying.
There's too
they
much
can.
impervious surface.
Further up the hill, yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's not the tree's fault.
Okay, we're running out of time.
I
We
know.
better
All right.
move on.
All right, so we're not doing the tree inventory tonight. Do we have any comments from the commission? Items for next agenda. So I guess it's gonna be review of the shade of the revised ordinance. And what's that?
Oh, I said no public comment.
Oh, yeah,
We got
yeah.
that one.
Well, do we have anything else? Do we want to try to do the tree inventory again?
Yeah, definitely.
Before we get back to being dark? And what else? Anything else for the agenda that you guys can think of?
Doesn't look like there will be much.
Okay. Alrighty, all right, then, no public. So we're adjourned.